So Luke, the 15th chapter, and beginning in the first verse here. It says, "Then drew near unto him all the publicans and sinners for to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receiveth sinners and eateth with them." You may be seated. If Jesus were to come and live among us and walk among us today like he did back in the Gospels, you have to wonder, where would you expect to find Jesus at? He was just wandering around Madison County. Where would you look for him? The obvious answer is you'd expect to see Jesus in church, wouldn't you? I mean, if anybody's going to go to church, surely it would be Jesus. Sunday morning service, Wednesday night Bible studies, revivals, camp meetings, conferences. Surely Jesus would be at every single one of them. That's where you'd expect to find Jesus, amongst other religious people like us. That's where you'd expect it. You wouldn't be surprised to meet Jesus at church. But you would be surprised if you wandered into a local restaurant and there was Jesus, surrounded by a big crowd of the worst people in town. People you know are sinners, people you know exactly how they live and what they do and what they're up to, people you wouldn't even want to pass by on the sidewalk. And there is Jesus holding court with them. He's eating, he's laughing, and he's talking with the worst people you can imagine. Sinners, evil people, wicked people. That would be shocking to us to see that. You can imagine how they must have felt back in Jesus' day. You see in our text here, that's exactly what happened. Jesus came among us. He dwelt among us. And who did he choose to spend his time with? Not the religious leaders. Not them. He didn't spend much time around the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes and the priests. He spent his time, it says, with sinners. In this text here this morning, it says Jesus has gone somewhere to teach. And when he does, all the sinners draw near to hear him. And the religious leaders are there. And they see this. And they accuse Jesus loudly. They say, "This man claims to be a holy man, a teacher, and he receives and eats with sinners. He associates with the wrong kind of people. Don't listen to somebody like that. He should be eating with us, the holy people of Israel, not these sinners." Jesus does not argue with them. All Jesus does in response is tells some stories. He tells 3 stories to respond to this accusation. He tells a story about a lost sheep. And then he tells a story about a lost coin. And then finally, he tells a story about lost sons. And that's where I want to take you today. I want to look at this story of 2 lost sons that Jesus tells in response to this cry, "This man eats with sinners." Because this story, this tale as we call it, of the prodigal son, it tells us a lot about ourselves as people, but it also tells us a whole lot about Jesus. So if you'll look back there in Luke chapter 15, we'll read that story beginning in verse number 11. It says, "And he said," that is Jesus, "A certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine, and he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. You see here, Jesus tells a very simple story that most of us probably know already. But it's one of those stories that you can read over and over again and not necessarily see just what Jesus is trying to show us here. Let's look at this story. Jesus says there was a man, a rich man evidently, who had 2 sons. And the younger son apparently wasn't happy with his life. He wasn't happy with being in the father's house and having everything he needed. So he gets a really dumb idea in his head. The boy was either brave or stupid or both. Because you heard what he said. He says to his father, Father, one day you're going to die. And I'm going to have a bunch of money. But I can't wait for you to die. I'm young now. I want to have fun now. When you die, I might be an old man. So give me my share now. Give it to me now. That way I can have my fun. Now, if I had a son, and he said such a thing to me, we would not be getting along very well. And I would probably say many things, and the thing I would not say is, yes, son, I will do that. We expect this father to be angry. This is a dumb thing to ask. Not just dumb, it's very disrespectful. It's rude. It's evil. And what does the father say, though? He says, okay. And it says he divides the living. He gives the younger son his portion, and even though elder brother asks for nothing, he gives him his portion too. We look at it and we say, well, why in the world would he do that? Why would he do that? Well, that's just like God, isn't it? Yeah. If you want to go out into the world and sin, if you want to decide today, this is my last Sunday in church, I'm done, I'm gone, I'm never going back, God won't stop you. He won't stop you. He'll let you go into the world. He'll let you sin to your heart's content, and he will not stop you. He allows us that. He wants sons and daughters. He does not want hired servants who have to stay in the house. So if you want to go into the world, the Father says, fine. If you have to go out there, son, to see what's out there, you go ahead. I'll give it to you. I won't withhold it. And so you heard what it said. The son goes. He takes his money and he runs to a far, far country, and he has the time of his life. You think about it. When you got a lot of money and you're willing to spend it, it's really easy to get friends. You'll have all the friends in the world if you're loose with your money. People will come flocking. If you're buying the drinks and paying for the party, friends will come out of the woodwork. And that must have been what happened with him. He had the time of his life. He had fun. He enjoyed the pleasures of the world for a season. But anybody could have told him what happened next. The money was going to run out at some point, and it did. And it ran out at the worst possible time. A famine came on the land. It didn't matter if you had money. There wasn't much food to have anyway. And so now this young man is broke in a far-off country. There's a famine in the land, and I guarantee you all those friends are long, long gone. He's alone. Now, the common sense thing would be at this point to say, okay, I've messed up big time. Let me take myself back to the Father's house. Let me swallow my pride, put up with whatever Dad will say to me and do to me, and just go back home. But he doesn't. He doesn't do it. He stays there. What stubbornness is in him that makes him stay there and stay there? He could have gone home right then, but he continues to suffer. You notice what it said. He goes and he finds a job. Only job he could find was feeding the pigs. Now remember, this is a good Jewish boy. Pigs are unclean in the law of Moses. This was shameful for him. It was shameful. He was breaking God's law by doing this. But that's the only job he could find. And it didn't pay very much because it says he was so hungry, even with this job, that he was looking at the pig food and it was looking better every single day. Now, we've all seen what pigs eat. You'd have to be beyond hungry for that to start to look good. But he was sitting there thinking, you know what? That's starting to look good because I am so hungry. Think about it. This boy had been in the Father's house. He had sat at the Father's table. He ate whatever he wanted. He had everything he needed. And now he's in a pig pen and he's envying the pig's dinner. What a sad and sorry state for somebody to be in. How sad and sorry for a child of the Father, a son, a daughter of the Father, to be in a pig pen, dirty and muddy and hungry and alone, when he had a seat reserved for him at the Father's house that nobody could take from him. How like us that is. Whether you want to be or not, you are a son. You are a daughter of the Father, and you have a place reserved for you in the Father's house. It is reserved for you right there at heaven's table to feast with Jesus forever. And yet what do? What do we waste our days doing? We waste our days in the pig pen. Hungry. That's the thing about sin right there. Sin looks very tasty, and sin is tasty. But the more you get, the hungrier you get. Somebody once said that sin and our desire for it is like somebody who's dying of thirst, craving salt. Can you imagine that? Somebody who's just dying of thirst, and there's a fountain of living waters right there. And what are they doing? They're eating salt by the barrelful. What's it going to do? They get thirstier and thirstier and thirstier, but they can't stop. They won't stop. That's sin for you. It will satisfy for a season, but ultimately it makes you hungrier. It makes you emptier. So you're there in the pig pen thinking, what in the world am I doing? I started out with small things. Now look where I've gone. That's a sad, sad place to be. And sometimes people stay there way, way longer than they should. And some people never, ever leave. But this young man, at some point, we don't know how long, days, weeks, months, years, at some point it says he came to himself. That is to say, he came to his senses. He woke up and he finally realized, what am I doing? I'm feeding pigs and I'm getting this close to eating what they eat. You know, sometimes some people, they're not going to get it until they hit rock bottom. Some people don't. They don't get it till they hit rock bottom and they've lost it all and they can't go any lower, and that's when they finally get it. That's when they finally get it. Don't wait till you get to rock bottom. However bad you think it is now, it can get worse. It can get worse. Don't wait till it's too late. Come to Jesus before you get to the pig pen. Come to Jesus before you get so hungry that you've lost your mind. But thankfully, at some point, that young man came to his senses. And he says, now this is silly. My Father's servants eat good. They're getting fat off what they eat. He serves them good meals. And here I am, a son of the Father, and I'm trying to eat this stuff. And he comes up with a plan. And his plan is the saddest little plan you've ever heard in your life. It's pitiful. And his plan makes you realize why he waited so long to go back home. He says, what I'll do is, I'll go back to my father and I'll say, I know I messed up. I don't deserve to be your son. Make me a servant. You need servants. Hire me and I'll work and you feed me and you pay me, and that'll be good. That'll be enough. Don't want your forgiveness. I just want to live. You realize in that why you waited so long to come home. Think about it. Remember the ending of the story. We all know it. What does the Father do? He shows mercy and love and compassion. Did the Son not know his Father well enough to know how he would respond? Did he not know that his Father was merciful? Did he not understand the depth of the Father's love? He stayed in the pig pen way longer than he should have because he did not know his Father. If he had really known him, if he had really understood him, as soon as things got rough, he'd have turned around and ran home. You know, sometimes we stay in the pig pen longer than we need to because we do not know the Father. You listen to the devil and you listen to the world that says you're not good enough, you're too dirty, you're too messed up, you're too far gone, when all the while the Father is standing at home and he's on the front porch and he is looking for you and watching for you to come home so he can greet you with love. But we deceive ourselves. And we get in this same mindset as this young man thinking, I've got to beg, I've got to plead, I've got to bargain if the master is going to let me back. When in reality, none of it was necessary at all. And so that's what this young man does. He takes the longest walk of his life back to where he grew up. You can imagine he's rehearsing over and over and over his little speech, but he never gets to give it. Because what happens? He gets into his little village, maybe there at the edge of the village where he grew up, and all of a sudden a crazy person comes running down the road like a flash of lightning, probably crying and shouting and just acting insane. And it's the father. Because it says that while the boy was yet a long way off, it says his father saw him. He saw him. He was standing on the front porch, and he looked out, and there was his son. He looked terrible. He was half naked, in rags, barefoot, dirty. He looked awful, but he says, that's my son. That's my child. That's my boy. He's come back home. You say, what a coincidence. He's standing on the front porch at the exact moment he comes home. We know that's no coincidence. That guy had been standing on there a long, long time. Every day probably, waiting and watching and praying and hoping that today would be the day his son came home. And so it says, he ran to him. You can sort of imagine he's standing there on the front porch with his servants, and all of a sudden the master just takes off like he's been shot. And the servants probably look at each other and run after him thinking, what in the world is going on? The master does not run. But the thing you have to understand about their society, they were a lot more proper than us. This is the man of the house. He's the elder. He's the patriarch. They did not run. Children ran, young men ran, women ran, but the man of the house was too dignified to run like that. You think about it, they wore robes. You'd have to hike up your robe to run. That exposes your legs. That's shameful for the man of the house to do that. And so you can imagine the reaction of the people around when all of a sudden this dignified gentleman just comes running down the road. He doesn't care. He's not concerned. All he sees is his son. Let the shame come. Let the people talk. His son is back home, and nothing's going to stop him from coming to him. And it says he falls on him, he kisses him, and he loves him. And the young man tries to start his speech, and the father cuts him off. He tells the servants, he says, get a robe, get a ring, get shoes for his feet, kill the fatted calf. My son is home, not my servant, not my slave, not the dumb boy who stole my money. He says, my son is home. He was dead to me, but now he's alive. He was lost, and now I found him. He says he's home, and so I don't care about the rest. No explanations needed. No, sons, where's the money, and how are you going to pay me back? No, just, you're home. That's what matters now. That's one of the most beautiful pictures we really have in the Gospels of how much Jesus really loves us. You can imagine the Pharisees listening to this story. They knew Jesus' point. They were smart men. They understood the Father was God in this story. Jesus is telling those guys, you don't know what God's really like. You think God's like you, angry and judgmental and self-righteous, but you don't realize that God is love, that He loves us, and that He cares for us, and that His love is enough to cover every one of these sinners who has come and eaten with me. He says, you don't understand the extent of the love of God, because the story is not really accurate to what God does, is it? In the story, the Father stands at the house and He waits for the Son. What the Pharisees don't realize is that the Father was not content to stay at home. They don't realize that even now, Jesus, who was by very nature God, is walking among them to do exactly what the Father was doing. He had come to find his lost children. He had come to seek them out, and he had an appointment with the cross to take care of it all. This is the most beautiful picture we have of the love of the Father. If you've got your idea of God as some angry old man up in heaven, you've gotten that from our culture. You have not gotten that from the Word of God. Because Jesus says, this is what God looks like. I don't know about you. You read about this guy and you think, man, what would it be to have a father like this? Maybe you had a good father. Maybe you had a terrible father. But we all can look at this man and say, we had a father like this, so compassionate, so forgiving, so full of love. And Jesus' point is, you do have a father like this. This is what the Father is look like. He says, this is what God is like. That's why you rebuke me for eating with sinners, because you don't know what God is really like. Of course, that's a beautiful ending to the story. Wonderful. But that's not where Jesus stops, is it? We know he has a little bit more, because there was another brother in the story. You go down to Luke chapter 15 and verse 25, it says, "Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry, and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and entreated him. And he answering said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment. And yet thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead, and is alive again, and was lost, and is found." If you were reading this story for the first time, you would probably be surprised at the father's reaction of love toward his son. It's not what we expect. We'd be even more surprised by the elder brother's reaction to the return of the prodigal. He's not happy. He's mad. He is downright furious, and he's being terribly disrespectful to his father here. You notice he doesn't even address him as father. He creates distance. It says he's angry. And when he talks about his brother, he calls him thy son. He's like, that's not my brother, that's your son. You see the attitude he has. You can imagine his hurt. He was doing right. He stayed home. He worked the farm. He did what he was supposed to do. He was faithful. But now the other one has come home. And he expected punishment. He expected anger. He expected consequences. And what does he get? Party. You can understand his anger a little bit. But the vileness in his words, the hatred he has for his brother, it's so sad. It's so terrible. And you can tell the father doesn't understand it either. He says, look, this was proper. He says, why would I not celebrate? He's like, I can't explain to you why I would celebrate, because it's just the most natural thing to do. He was dead. We thought he was in a ditch somewhere, dead. And now he's home and he's alive and he's healthy. Why would I not celebrate? But the older brother can't see it. Notice his words. All he thinks about is what he's done. He says, I worked for you. I've labored, and you never rewarded me. Now, Jesus' listeners would have understood exactly what he was saying. He was pointing a jab right at those religious leaders. He was looking at them and saying, yes, I eat with sinners just like that younger son, but you guys are just like this elder brother. He said, that's you. You don't care about the lost. He says, you don't care about these sinners. He says, all you care about are your rules and your regulations. You have your relationship with God down pat. You obey Him and He rewards you. It's a business transaction and there's nothing more to it. There's nothing more to it at all. You think if you keep the law right and you look right and act right and talk right, God will reward you. And you've done a pretty good job at that, but the problem is your religion is all in your head and it has never actually reached your heart. And I can tell that because of your reaction to these sinners. If you were really the Father's Son, you would have the Father's love in you. And you would have the Father's compassion, and you would have the Father's heart for the lost. That's what Jesus is doing. This isn't a sweet little parable He's telling them. He's attacking them right back. He's attacking them right back because the younger son was a mess. And that's why we call him a prodigal. We call him the prodigal son. And that just means wasteful or reckless. He was the wasteful son. He wasted all that money in a far country. But his worst sin really was he wasted the Father's love. And if that's the case, the elder brother too is a prodigal. He was in the Father's house, yet he wasted the Father's love as well. One son goes far away and doesn't experience the Father's love. The other stays at home and talks to him every single day and never knows his love. Jesus is telling them a terrible truth. He says, you can be lost by going out into the world and sinning, but you can also be lost sitting on a church pew. He says you can have so much religion and you can be so obsessed with looking right and acting right and talking right and checking all the boxes of religion that make you feel like a Christian. He says, but if you don't actually have a relationship with God, if you really don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ that makes you like Him, He says, you have nothing. You're just as lost. Both sons were just as lost as could be. Both sons needed the Father's love. Jesus says, you've got to change either way. That's a hard truth for us to understand. It's a hard truth for us to swallow sometimes. You notice this parable ends on a cliffhanger. That's where it stops. There's nothing more. Does the elder brother reconcile, or does he stay in the yard angry? We're never told the answer. I can imagine when Jesus gets done with this parable, he sort of looks up and he stares the religious leaders right dead in the eye, as if challenging them, saying, well, what are you going to do then, older brother? What are you going to do? Are you going to come to me and experience this love, or are you going to sit around full of bitter jealousy? We don't know what choice those people there made. We know the religious leaders as a whole, they chose to kill Jesus. They chose to crucify Him. They chose to ignore the lesson He taught. But what will we do with this lesson? See, here in this parable, these sons really tell us a lot about ourselves. We've all been where they've been at some point, either the older one or the younger one. You may have been in the pig pen, and you may have wandered far from the Father's love, and you may have done things you regret, things that make you dirty and filthy and make you think that God would never accept you. In this parable, Jesus says, you're wrong. You're wrong. He says, you do not understand the depths of the Father's love. You don't realize how big and deep and wide and long the Father's love really is. It can take whatever you've done and wherever you've been. But He also speaks to the hypocrites among us, to the people who sat on a church pew so long that they really don't even have a relationship with Jesus. All they're worried about is looking just right enough to be accepted. And they're not really worried about actually having that relationship with Jesus that makes the love of God overflow in our hearts through God's Spirit. Jesus says to those as well, my love is enough for you. He says, if I can take care of the sinner, I can change you too. Of course, the most impressive thing in this story isn't the sons at all. It's the Father. It's His love. It's the fact that Jesus points to Him and says, this is what I'm doing. This is what I look like. This is what God is like. He loves you more than you can ever imagine. His mercy is greater than you could ever think. His compassion knows no bounds. Those people there may have needed convincing of it, but we don't. We can look to the cross and we can see God's love displayed there. He says, that's how far my love goes, even into the grave itself. And so Jesus leaves us here with this answer. What will we do? Will we stay in a far country? Will we die in the Father's house? Or will we accept the Father's love for us? Would you stand with me this morning as we close? The truth of the matter is, we've all been in the pig pen at some point in our lives. Difference is, some of us have been out a little longer and have had a chance to get clean, but we've all been there before. And that's not a place to stay. That's not a place to live. This morning, if you are out in your sins, you need to come to the Father while you still can. He's here this morning. The Spirit of the living God is here, and He will cleanse you of every sin if you let Him. If your heart has become hardened, if you've just fallen into the routine of religion and you don't actually have a relationship with Jesus Christ, the Father is here this morning. His love is here. But you've got to respond. You've got to go unto Him. You've got to seek His love out. Would anybody like to come and pray this morning? I'm going to ask everybody to come out in a second, but is anybody who'd like to say, I need this love in my life? This is what I need this morning. I'm not going to leave here until I know my God, until I felt His touch. Is there anybody who'd say, I need to come and pray this morning? Anybody at all? Don't wait too late. Come while He still may be found. Could we all come? Could everybody come? Everybody that will just come. Let's come seek God. Let's pray together here as a church family this morning.